And welcome back, everyone. It is Sunday, November 19th. It is I, Robbie, back here with my co-host Snail, and we have a doubleheader of a Penscast recap episode to bring you this evening. We have first off Monday or Saturday night's game against the Carolina Hurricanes, and then we will delve into this evening's game against the Vegas Golden Knights, and they are two games with polar opposite results to talk about. So we will start on Saturday night in Carolina. The Penguins taking on the Carolina Hurricanes for the first time this year, and as good as things started out, they did not end that way. Um, in Raleigh, as the Penguins dropped this game 4-2, it is their at the time their second loss in a row after losing to Jersey during the week. It brings them back at this point to 8-8 on the season. But before delving too much into the scoring of that game, I will turn it over to Snell for his thoughts on the loss to the Hurricanes.
So a disappointing loss. That was I thought that the Penguins should have no issue going in and at least getting a point, but I actually during the game I came across like a little bit of a stat that the Penguins just haven't beat the Carolina Hurricanes in a long time. I've since lost the stat here on my computer, but nonetheless, they haven't walked away with an outright dub in a long time. I think I remember last year they took them to OT and got a point out of a game that ended up ending with the. You remember that game with Brian Rust? He got knocked into the boards. It was like a boarding call. Anyway, the Penguins haven't won. I thought maybe last night or would have been or whenever this dropped, Saturday night would have been. The Canes are struggling right now. Is also my point here. Is they haven't been the Canes of old. They're not just steamrolling teams. I thought the Penguins should have got a point out of that game last night, but they also weren't doing themselves any favors. They have no problem scoring first. They can get on the board quick, but it's maintaining a lead. And this team is a team that's fast, and I like to use the word slippery when regarding the Carolina Hurricanes. They're sticky too, slippery and sticky at the same time. They kind of play that man-on-man coverage, and they got a lot of slippery, fast, skilled players and just an awesome defense. They've got a bunch of household names on their first, second, and third pairing. So, honestly, a disappointment. And we talked about it a little bit before we hopped on here. That Seth Jarvis for Carolina, what a nugget he is for that team. He's a little bit more of a water bug out there. He's kind of an undersized guy, but he plays like he's 6'5". He goes to the hard areas. Funny enough that Seth Jarvis was the first round pick that the Toronto Maple Leafs packaged with Patty Marleau to get rid of him, and he didn't even play for Carolina. And out of that transaction, taking on Marleau's contract, they ended up with first line winger, top six player, right shot, Seth Jarvis. So I always keep an eye out for him whenever I watch the Carolina Hurricanes because I loved seeing Toronto suffer. I love knowing Toronto suffers. But anyways, I'll digress. But yeah, disappointing game against the Carolina Hurricanes. Wish they could have come out with a better showing. I thought they kind of left Jari out to dry. Anyways, I'll pass it back to you. But disappointing overall.
Yeah, I agree with that as well, and I'll delve into my thoughts here a little bit more. But let's go through the scoring real quick here. Tristan Jarry in goal for the front end of this back-to-back weekend, but starts off good. 10:40 into the first period. Sidney Crosby, his 11th of the year, from Jake Gensel and Eric Carlson, and this is Carlson and Crosby continuing their hot streaks, their respective hot streaks. Crosby makes it 11 straight games with a point at this point. And Eric Carlson, again, doing what Eric Carlson's done. And the Penguins exit the first period with a 1-0 lead. They carry that lead well past the halfway point of the second period and the game until Sebastian Aho at 13:06 gets his fifth of the year from Teuvo Teravainen. And Seth Jarvis, again, Jeff Jarvis, who Snell just mentioned. You'll hear his name quite a bit more as we get into the third period. But at the end of two, it is 1-1, and then the scoring really picks up in the third period. First, at 2:46, Brent Burns gives the Carolina Hurricanes their first lead of the evening to break the 1-1 1-1 draw, his fourth of the year from Jacob Slavin and Andrei Svechnikov, right as a penalty expired. So it wasn't a power play goal for the Hurricanes, but it might as well have been. It was really just as the last second ticked off the clock. Carolina did score a third goal, but it was waved off to offsides. And then at 9:16, just when the Penguins looked like they may have been out of this game, here comes Captain Crosby to rescue them once again. His second of the game, 12th of the year from Chris Letang and Brian Rust, set up by an insane play by Erik Karlsson, actually leading the rush, and Crosby being at the right place, right time to shovel it home for a 2-2 tie midway through the third period. And when you start to think maybe they can crawl to overtime and get a point out of this, but unfortunately, Seth Jarvis, that man, again at 11:52, scores the eventual game winner from Jacob Slavin and Brent Burns. And at 3-2, you think the Penguins still have hope. They do get a late power play. Nothing turns into it. Seth Jarvis gets his seventh of the year into the empty net to put the icing on the cake and cap off his big night. Sebastian Aho and Teuvo Teravainen get the helpers on that one, and the final ends at 4-2. And this was a classic example of what we've seen out of the Pens in recent years. Those top two lines clicking, getting nothing from the bottom six. And when you get a team that can just roll four lines like the Hurricanes, even if those bottom six aren't scoring, they're just producing chances, possessing the puck, wearing down the Penguins, and just kind of opening space for your guys like Aho, Seth Jarvis, Slavin, Teravainen to do work. And that's exactly what happened on this night. Also, Antti Ranta, who was starting in goal for the Hurricanes, was making the saves that Tristan Jarry was not. Jarry did have a couple of great saves in this game, but it felt like some of the ones that he should have saved were the ones getting through, whereas Ranta was not letting those opportunities get by him. And the Penguins suffer their second loss in a row at this point. But just the bright side out of this game, obviously Sidney Crosby was still doing Sidney Crosby things. Erik Karlsson was being what we expected out of Erik Karlsson basically this entire season. Crosby, at this point, up to 12 goals on the season. He ended the night just 1 point off the goal-scoring lead in the NHL and just 5 points off the points lead in the NHL. He had recorded a point in 15 of 16 games this season and 11 in a row to this straight games to this point. And, I mean, Snail, I mean, there's nothing else you can say about the guy at this point. I don't think, not just this season, but as a whole. But what he's doing this season at this age is just, I mean, it doesn't really make sense because you think historically guys at this age in any sport are well past their prime, but it just seems like age just does not matter to Sidney Crosby.
Yeah, the key word there was this doesn't happen to guys, but Sidney Crosby is not guys. Sidney Crosby is I think he's and this might be somewhat biased because I'm a Pittsburgh fan, but he's a Mount Rushmore player. And when people start talking about Sid, I love hearing people talk about Sid. And when I say love, I actually mean hate because they're always kind of waiting for him to fall off. This guy falling off for Sidney Crosby is not going to look like what falling off is to the average, I would say, star player or good player, great player. There's a lot of measuring sticks out there and a lot of people use like Ovi and whatnot. But think about a guy like Pavelski down in Dallas right now. Pavelski is aging as well, but he's not a Sidney Crosby talent. He's a great player. I love Pavelski's game. I think he's a great player and he's a competitor, much like Sid. He's finding ways at his older age to get things done. And you look at him, he's in shape. He's got that edge. He's competitive. I look at him as kind of like a guy like Sidney Crosby in a way. He's not going to just fall off the face of the earth. He's not going to be like, just I don't know, any good player that has 1 year all of a sudden it's like, yeah, he scored 8 goals instead of 25, and before that he was a perennial 30 goal scorer. That's not going to be Sidney Crosby. So I love hearing people start to bring him up, be like, well, is this the year? They always say he's gonna regress. You can't count on him eventually. And this year, this might be Sid's year. Like he's not slowing down so far this season, and we're getting close to that typical American Thanksgiving that you love to hear. And he's rolling. Gino's been a beast. Erik Karlsson is waking up and he's starting to do Erik Karlsson things. But it's been the Pittsburgh Sidney Crosbys, because he is single-handedly moving heaven and earth, it seems at times, to try to keep this team afloat when the depth isn't doing it. Gino can only do so much. Sid can only do so much. Right now, Gino's line is with it's Riley Smith and Gino. Raquel doesn't do anything. He hasn't done anything. He's a ghost. He can't. I feel for the guy. I liked this. I liked the Raquel pickup that one year at the deadline. Didn't really like the signing, to be totally honest. It's a line. It's 2/3 of a second line and Sid's line at times doing all the heavy lifting, and Sid is single-handedly seeming at times determined to even up the score, get the lead, make the smart play. And yeah, nothing to take away from those other good players, but it's sometimes, like I had said it jokingly, I mean, it's the Pittsburgh Sidney Crosbys out there against whoever their opponent is.
Yeah, I mean, what he's doing this year has just been, I mean, it really defies kind of all explanation. Again, guys as talented as Crosby do have the ability to hang on a little bit longer. It's kind of the Tom Brady effect to compare it to an NFL type situation. But at some point, you think you're kind of waiting that maybe this year will be the year, and then every year he just says that he's going to continue to play at that high level to the point where it's just an expectation at this point.
Totally. I also, another guy that I think of is like Joe Thornton. Joe Thornton played until I believe he was in his 40s, 40, 41 when he was with the Panthers, and before that Toronto. Joe Thornton is another. He's not a Mount Rushmore player, but he was a generational talent. And just look at the way that his career kind of went. He ended up becoming a fourth line guy, a grumpy old man on the fourth line. But until he was in his late 30s, he was setting guys up. He's making plays. He's down low below the dots. You only think, thinking forward in the future, Sid could take a similar route. Maybe you're not relying him so much, but you stick him on the power play. He's going to be a grumpy old man in front of the net, and he's going to play down low below the dots. He's going to be setting guys up. I see Sid taking kind of a similar path as maybe like a Joe Thornton. They're different players. They're different sizes. I understand all of that, but just kind of the skill set kind of is similar in my effect. They're great centermen. I think that it's going to be kind of a similar, I could see Sid being gray and 42 years old, just parking him in front of the net, putting him down low, taking faceoffs, put him on the fourth line with a couple of plumbers. He's still going to produce. He's still going to be reliable 5-on-5. He's just that kind of guy. And like you said, Tom Brady's another great. Yeah, I think he takes such good care of himself. He can't grow the facial hair like Jumbo Joe, but he might take a similar path as he did.
And yeah, that's a fair. Speaking about taking care of yourself, that goes a long way as well. Crosby does the intense work. All those elite athletes have to be on top of their game at this age, but a very important part that a lot of people maybe don't talk about. They just focus on the on ice stuff, but a lot of the off ice stuff is there as well. And if we're going to talk about old guys producing at this age, I think you got to give a hat tip to Erik Karlsson and Evgeny Malkin as well. I mean, two guys that are no longer young bucks in the league. They're both over 30, 35 years old and still producing at very high levels themselves as well. So the Penguins, for all their issues, and again, we talk about the age number. The age number matters a lot less when a bunch of those older guys are producing at all-star levels. So, the Penguins dropped that game 4-2 to the Carolina Hurricanes, but we move on to this evening, November 19th. Vegas comes to town, and you're thinking, boy, this is probably not the team you want to face on a 2-game losing streak, especially after playing the night before. Now, Vegas did also play yesterday in Philadelphia, so they had to travel as well, had a few extra hours rest, but that's neither here nor there. But the Vegas Golden Knights come into this game at 13-3-2. as the defending Stanley Cup champions, and the Penguins absolutely put together maybe their most complete performance of the year and dominate the visiting Golden Knights by a score of 3-0. Tonight's goaltender is Alex Nedeljkovic, back in goal for the first time in quite a few weeks after rehabbing an injury, and just a few days after scoring a goalie goal as a member in a rehab start with the Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins. So he was coming in confident as hell, and he proved it tonight, shutting out the high-powered Golden Knights 3-0. And as much as we talk about, or before we get into anything else, I will shift it over to Snail here for his first thoughts on the Penguins getting back in the win column against a very, very good Vegas Golden Knights team.
Honestly, didn't know what kind of Penguins team we were about to get tonight, with it being a back-to-back and going up against a team like Vegas. The Penguins have been good against Western teams this year. It's their teams in their own division and out east that they tend to shit the bed against. But Colorado and Vegas, shutting them out, not an issue. Nedeljkovic, hell of a game. He came in confident. I think it showed. I think he was looking big in net, and he was making the saves. I think the team played exceptionally well in front of him, though. And I think we've said this before. I think the Penguins can make or break a goaltender. I think that the goaltenders, almost their goals against at times, is showing of the systems and whatnot that they execute in front of them. So good on Ned. I'm happy to see him back up. I've been curious about this guy since they signed him. I think also the Penguins kind of maybe took advantage a little bit of a tired Vegas team. Says here that Vegas is playing they played its fourth game of a season-long 5-game road trip on Sunday. The Golden Knights are in the midst of a stretch in which they play 8 of 9 games on the road. So this is one of those games that I with this Penguins team, they're so good. Take advantage of these teams, man. You gotta smell blood in the water sometimes. If they're tired, take advantage. Like the game against Carolina, they're struggling. They're not the Carolina of old. Just put the pin down and take advantage of them. New Jersey as well. They're without their 2 top centermen. They're without Hughes and they're without Hischier. Why can't you just put the pin down? No mercy, take advantage of them. But tonight was the case. They did take advantage of them. They put the beat down on Aiden Hill, and they come out with a big dub. I'm happy to see them come away with a dominant performance.
And a dominant performance it was. And as much as we talked about the top 6 playing games like they did against Carolina, this was a game for the bottom 6, the top 6. Maybe a little worn down from last night, but the bottom 6 for once steps up and pulls through. Early in the first period, we get the Penguins open the scoring, kind of similar to last night, but it's Ryan Graves, his first goal as a Penguin, with assists from third liners Radim Zahorna and Drew O'Connor at 2:13 of the first period. And that's basically how the score remained until later in the second half of the second period. Another guy getting his first goal as a member of the Penguins, Noel Achari, on the fourth line with an assist from Matt Nieto. And all of a sudden, a defenseman goal with 2 assists from the third line, and then a fourth line goal have the Penguins up 2-0. And it was the Andy Nedeljkovic show outside of that, but they do put it away after killing a late penalty. It is Evgeny Malkin showing up for the top 6, I guess, on this night, potting one into the empty net at 18:42. Assist from Gensel and Letang that puts the icing on the cake on this one to make it 3-0, and that is your final. The Penguins welcome the Golden Knights in on a 2-game losing streak, and the Penguins basically complete the Philadelphia sweep, or the Pennsylvania sweep of the Knights this weekend. Philly beating them yesterday, and the Golden Knights not used to these type of setbacks, and the Penguins just come out and put together a complete performance. A 38-save shutout from Nedeljkovic. Great to see him back, and it seems like he's healthy and he's confident, which is what the Penguins absolutely need if they're going to be seeing more or be playing him more in goal, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But you got to give the bottom six props when they show up, and they certainly did tonight, recording 4 points on the first two goals. Ryan Graves getting his first as a Penguin. And the Penguins really just going out there and going toe-to-toe with a very, very good Vegas Golden Knights team. And it just makes you wonder if they can get these type of performances more often from the bottom six, what really is this team capable of? Because they just skated with basically the consensus best team in the NHL right now, the defending Stanley Cup champions, a team that is going to be there again this spring. And it just makes you wonder that if they can get more consistent performances and more consistent output from guys like Zahorna, Achari, Nieto, O'Connor, what really is this team capable of? Because if it is like tonight, they're going to be a dangerous team if they can keep it all together.
Totally. What is this team capable of? But who even is this team? Like, we'll see two different teams, two different nights. We'll see a team that has a lot of holes in their game. The D pinching down a little prematurely, getting caught, lot of breakaways, a lot of 2-on-1s, sometimes a 3-on-1. Forwards just busting ass to get back and cover somebody. Leaky goals from goaltenders. And then the next night, it's relentless forecheck, but without the irresponsible kind of pinching down of the D, making the right choices when they're kind of walking the blue line up top. The depth chipping in and being more of a kind of wear you down, hang on to pucks type of bottom six, as opposed to just a defensive liability, offensive liability. It's two different teams, man, and you never really seem to know who you're gonna get. It seems that we get the A+ squad when the chips are against them, and you get kind of the lackadaisical squad when when they should be smelling blood in the water. But yeah, when you get the team contributing as a whole like this up and down the roster, I did not have Ryan Graves with a goal on my bingo card tonight, but we'll take it. Yeah, it's just it's American Thanksgiving is upon us, as Robbie says, the only Thanksgiving that matters. And that's typically a measuring stick to see where you're at. The Penguins are similar to last year. I mean, they're on the outside looking in, but just barely. And this team, I think, has more of an internal question of who are they? Which team are they going forward? Which team do we see that are they going to commit to being? And I think that if they go with the team that we saw tonight and the team that we saw against the Avalanche, they need to commit to it wholeheartedly, and it's an attention to details every single night going forward, because I cannot handle the other team, the lackadaisical top six dominant, bottom six are all ghosts out there, leaky goal team, Jari doing I don't even know what back there in net. I cannot watch that team. They show that they have the potential to be, I think, not even a playoff team. They play like this every night. They're a playoff team. I think these guys could contend for the cup, but it's up to them, I guess, going forward. I'll pass it back to you, Robbie. I think we got some, with tonight's showing, we got some questions about goaltending going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to touch on before we get to that. What do you think the preseason odds were on Ryan Graves and Noel Acciari scoring a goal before Rickard Rakell were? They had to be somewhere like 1 in 10,000 or something like that.
10,000 something.
Yeah,
like
it's
that.
something like I don't think anybody would have taken that if you would have told them that on as we approach the one and true Thanksgiving that Noel Acciari and Ryan Graves would have more goals than Rickard Rakell, and that number being 1, as Rickard Rakell still sits on a big old goose egg in that department. But
we should talk about Rakell quick, because I have a couple thoughts.
Go ahead. Yeah, Rickard Rakell still on 0 goals as we are at game 17 now. We are rapidly approaching the quarter pool of the season, and Rickard Rakell, a top 6 winger, still has 0 goals.
So I had said this earlier in the season, maybe around the 11 game mark, 10, 11 game mark. Raquel had yet to score. I think does he have a point? Does he have a single point?
Yeah, he has a couple assists. I do know
Couple
that.
assists.
He
I think this was
has.
when he had one point. He had an assist. But I liked his game. He was noticeable to me every night. He was a dog on the puck. There was desperation to his game. One of my only knocks against Ricard Raquel in the past was I don't like his body language sometimes. He doesn't look like somebody that seems very driven out there. He doesn't seem like somebody that really hates to kind of lose, that hate to lose mentality. He's a big guy with an awesome shot, but sometimes he kind of reminds me of like an old Willie Nylander or something, like the Willie Nylander before the contract years, who I'm talking about. Doesn't It just seems disengaged, and that used to really bug me. But when he going into that maybe 9, 10, 11 games without a goal, he looked engaged. He looked hungry. And I said, you know what? If this goal drought continues, but he looks like this every night, I don't mind it so much because I think that they're going to start going in for the guy. But right now, that guy is becoming a detriment to his line, I believe, which he hadn't been yet this season. I think this is starting to get to him. It's between the ears now more than it is anything. It's the Kasperi Kapanen effect. It's the Alex Galchenyuk effect. It's the cursed right winger of whoever Gino has since Kessel left. It's starting to look bad. We saw the shakeup the other night with swapping him and Zahorna, and I don't think that worked too well. They didn't go back to it tonight. I'm glad that they're not trying to save Raquel by putting him on Sid's line and get him his cookies on Sid's line, because we know that they work okay. They've been, last year we saw a lot of Raquel and Sid, but that line is the only line at times humming out there. I like that they're not saving him. I think we're looking at a guy it's gotten in his head. It's between the ears a little bit, and I don't know really what you do with him at this point. It's not like there is no easy fix. I think you just keep putting him out there, hoping that something happens. A scratch, you might have to scratch him, I think, before we start talking about trades, because right now, to get rid of the guy, you're going to have to package something, because other teams aren't looking at Raquel. His resume would show that this is not who he is as a player. Would you agree that this isn't the Raquel? He's a skilled guy. He's just snake bitten out the wazoo right now. If I were Dubas, which if I put on my my Dubas glasses here for a moment, if I'm Kyle Dubas right now, I'm calling up Patrick Alvin, I'm calling up Jimmy Rutherford, and I'm going, hey, this guy might need the Rick Tocchet effect. This guy might need the Rick Tocchet bump. What's going on with Connor Garland? We need a slippery, aggro little guy who just buzzes around out there and is a bit of a water bug. What do you think? That's what I would be doing if I was Dubas. But you might have to sweeten the deal. I don't know. I think before you do that, you use a healthy scratch and you see what he brings after a healthy scratch, or a benching. What about a good old fashioned benching? You start sitting him at one end of the bench and you're calling other guys names. You don't want to. It's like you don't want to hurt the guy's feelings because it's not for a lack of effort, but we're starting to see the body language kind of change a bit. I think you need to try something sooner than later, and before we start hooing and hawing about a trade. What do you think, Robbie?
It's really too bad that like Raquel wasn't a Rutherford addition, because as we know, Jim Rutherford is very attached to players that he has brought in the past, whether it be in Carolina or Pittsburgh.
True.
That way you couldn't just do like a 1-for-1 flop with like Garland, because Jim Rutherford's like, oh, I work with Rickard Raquel in the past. I'll just take him. We'll just do an even swap. But I don't think it's a you trade him before Christmas kind of thing. I think it's a you see where you're at after the holiday break and see what the deal is. Because again, as much as his attitude has kind of changed, again, like you mentioned, 10 games in the season, snake bitten, but you could see that the play was still there. Now it's to the point where it just seems like the game, like he's beyond having just the yips at this point. He's completely lost everything. And again, maybe the one goal ignites a fire again, but you can't sit and wait forever. You just have a guy that's making what $5.5 million eating up that much. Where if you can move him for a maybe a change of scenery type trade for both guys, then you may be looking to doing that. So I think we have another month um, before we see anything drastic, unless somebody else is making that phone call to Kyle Dubas rather than vice versa. But I think that I agree with where you are as now is in like this last 8 or 9 games. It feels like it's gone from tough luck but still confident to just the game. It's just the game is gone. It's like
He's forgotten how to play hockey. He's forgotten how to play hockey.
Yeah, at
I know
least
that's an exaggeration, but I say that sometimes about guys who you just. I said that about Carter last year. The dude's just forgotten how to play hockey, and he never really got it back. He's not a Jeff Carter, but right now it's not looking good for Rax.
Yeah,
and you hope for the best, but this isn't a break glass in case of emergency. Like we need this guy's a liability. We need to offload him. This is something needs to break his way. Something needs to change. Might need to bench him. I think put him in the press box, bench him for a period. You need to get him pissed off. That dude has no emotions, it looks like at times. And I think someone like that, you need to get under his skin and you need to piss him off so he goes out there and shoves it right up the coach's ass and says, there it is, and then you can hug it out after. No feelings hurt. You need to someone needs to find out. We need a Raquel whisperer. Someone needs to find a way to get that guy going. And right now I think everyone's scratching their head how you get a guy with that kind of skill going. He was not the guy I thought this year that would have an off year.
No, if you would have, of all the guys that in that roster that you would have had an off year, I may have even said a guy like Russ not having the bounce back that he has this year, just another kind of year like last year. I would have told if before the season, I would have had Raquel picked at about 25, 30 goals, especially with the way that the rest of his line is playing. If Malkin would have been hurt or just age would have finally caught up to Malkin and Riley Smith wouldn't have been what we've seen out of Riley Smith, like I would almost be like, okay, the line's just not good. But
right.
If you look at what Malkin and Smith are doing this year, it's just the mental, and it's nothing maybe even skill wise. He could go out and practice and pick every corner. If you put a tin can in a corner and hit it 10 times out of 10, it's all in between the ears rather than anything physical at all. And I think that's really what it is. It's all mental right now.
It is. It clearly is. I think that the second he steps out onto I've been saying this for a while too. I watch, I kind of ISO cam in on Raquel right now because I'm waiting to see the puck start going in for the guy. That guy's been falling down on the ice a lot. I see him swinging and missing, and he goes down on the ice, and that's unlike him. I think that's like, it's beyond the yips. And I think I have faith that something will get him going. I think Sullivan's got a trick or two with all the coaching he's done, with dealing with a guy like Phil Kessel, with dealing with guys like Kasperi Kapanen, who ultimately, it's kind of like it's a dark place to be when you're looking at those guys who just, they traded Phil. Galchenyuk never worked out. Kapanen didn't end up working out. He was one of those guys that was not scoring at all. I think Raquel has the potential to get out of this, and you just hope that Sullivan has a trick or two up his sleeve to get him going.
Yeah, absolutely. And not to harp on it too much. So we will kind of shift topics here a little bit, but some good Raquel discussion there because I feel like it was definitely warranted. So we'll give Snail stick taps for bringing that up. And we'll close this episode by talking about the goaltending situation. And it was kind of the night and day the last 2 nights. Jari was by no means dreadful against Carolina, but the saves that he didn't make, Antti Ranta made, and there's your game difference. Fast forward to this evening against Vegas, and Andy Nedeljkovic, that was by no means an easy shutout. That was 38 saves against as we've said before, a very good Vegas team. So that leaves me now with the question: Andy Nedeljkovic looks healthy. He looks confident. Um, he has a goal in the AHL to his name now, so that's a fun little tidbit there as well. But I think
It's
going
his
forward
second, I
now,
think. I think he
is
has
this
two.
second?
I
He
think he has
might.
two AHL goals.
Dang,
One more than
dang.
Jari.
One more than Jari does have an AHL goal. That's correct. So that leads me to this question now, and just glancing at the schedule real quick, they play on Wednesday night with the Rangers in town. Another back-to-back set um, this weekend before heading out on a small southern road trip down to Nashville and Tampa Bay. And so that begs the question now: do we need to see more of Andy Nedeljkovic between the pipes here in these next 2 to 3 weeks? Um, I just leave the question that do we need to see more of Andy Nedeljkovic getting starts for the Penguins here in the forthcoming leading up to Christmas?
Yeah, so my answer is plain and simple yes, and I'll tell you exactly why. He's got the confidence flowing. That's a big game to come away from with a dub. Unexpected, you might say.
A guy that hasn't played in the NHL game in over a month at this point because of injury. Like this is, I mean, it's not just that he's been on and off. Like he's, I mean, I know he played an AHL game, which is a professional hockey game, but you're going from playing Providence to playing the defending Stanley Cup champions, and not just playing them, but being excellent in the process.
Being excellent. The one thing that I noticed in watching Ned tonight was he looked confident handling the puck. He knew there sometimes you see Jari, he likes to touch the puck. He likes to get his touches in. He likes to try to get his assists and apples, and he likes to, he could score in an empty net if he wanted to, I'm sure. Sometimes Jari doesn't look the most confidence going back to handle the puck. I see hesitancy, a lot of looking over the shoulder, which I understand you need to do. You need to take a quick scan. But how many times have we seen Jari go back to take a puck and he coughs it up and it's a turnover? It doesn't clear right. Ned was going back there confidently, handling the puck and making great passes. There was no hesitancy to his game. He looked big in net. He's an okay sized guy. He's not Vasilevsky, but he's a bigger goaltender than Jari. He looked big in net tonight. I think he had the juices flowing, as they say. And right now, what do you do in the playoffs when you got a hot goaltender? You ride the hot hand. And I know that it's November. I know we're heading into the holiday breaks here coming up. But right now, the Penguins need to bank points. I'm not saying that the playoffs have started for the Penguins in November, but these are all the Penguins have put themselves in a precarious position and they need to bank dubs. That's their biggest deal going forward right now. And I think you need to take the dubs where you can. And if I'm Sully, if I am the squad that is assembling this team on a nightly basis, writing up the roster, I'm riding Ned right now. I think give Jari a little bit of a break. Get him. You got to get under his skin too, kind of like we talked about with Raquel. With Raquel, you need that internal competition. It's not. I think you need to. Who knows whose net it is right now? Show me whose net it is. That's what my attitude would be going forward. And right now, I'm riding Ned. As long as until he fumbles, and you say, Jari, show me what you got. That's how I'd handle it. I'm curious as to what you think and how they should go. How they should go about it moving forward.
I have to agree with that as much as I possibly can. This weekend you have Friday and Saturday back to back with Buffalo and Toronto, so you can pencil him in for one of those starts, I think, easily. But then you go south to Nashville and Tampa, and again, not back to backs, but I'd split them. Again, you don't want to fully go away from Jari just because you do want to keep him fresh, and I think flopping them completely as 1A or 1 and 2 would just destroy Jari's confidence. So I'm not saying Nedeljkovic is your one, but I'd split those starts. And then you get into a game against Philly, and then all of a sudden you're back on the road the first full week of December against Philly, and then you go back for a Florida swing. So I think you're definitely going. I need to see more of Nedeljkovic again. Getting him back, and he hasn't played since that Dallas game on the night that everybody in the NHL played. And he wasn't great that night, but the two other games he's played tonight and all the way back the first weekend of the season, he's been spectacular. He's given up in his 2 wins this year. He's given up just 2 goals across those 2 games. One being a shutout tonight. And again, this is a guy that he is a former second round pick. He was a 37th overall pick. He was very good the one season before leaving Carolina for the Hurricanes. He was excellent in goal. He did struggle a little bit in Detroit, but again, the Detroit team
They were
was in front.
rebuilding.
They were not a good hockey team, any way whatsoever. They were not a great hockey team. Again, and maybe Nedeljkovic is a guy where he thrives on not being the one, but being the 1B. He starts every third game, every fourth game, something like that. But if okay, we'll forget about Wednesday night for now. But like, say he starts against Buffalo and they win, and he gives up. Let's say they win 4-1. I mean, you're gonna have to keep him. He's gonna eventually, if he's playing like that, you're gonna have to give him more than just the back to backs. You're gonna have to be out here playing the bulk, or not the bulk, but his fair share.
Just give him games. Just keep.
Yeah,
I think just you keep giving him games, and I think that like why not, right? Like Ned Dubas signed Jari to the ticket. That was
yeah,
a Dubas signing. Dubas put his faith in Jari,
yeah.
and he went out and got goaltending depth. They have Garrett Sparks down there, which I don't even. When did they even get that guy? I don't even know.
I can't even remember. I mean, I don't know what the situation with Garrett Sparks is, because when they needed when when they were out in California and Jari got hit in the head that game, Joel Blomqvist was the third, I guess fourth goalie at that point. So I don't know what the situation is in Wilkes-Barre. I know at the very least, it seems like, and what they should be doing is getting Blomqvist as much action in the AHL as possible, because he is the next, like he is the next in line to be.
He's the goalie of the future, right?
Yeah, so like down there, I can understand why he's getting the bulk of the action, because they want him to develop and learn the North American game. But
right.
I mean, Hellberg was great in that start that he made. Seems like, and he was great in relief when he came in that night that Jari got hurt. So, I mean, I think that you just gotta kind of, I think you got to ride Nedeljkovic. Not saying that he has to be in there every night. He's not your number one, but until he falters a bit, I think he has to be getting his fair share of starts, just because he seems to have a lot more confidence than Tristan Jarry does right now.
Yeah, and I mean, this isn't like, Alex Nedeljkovic isn't. I think that saying that he's like a reclamation project type goaltender is a bit of a stretch. I think he's a young goaltender that's showed promise. He's good in the he has a pretty good reputation down in the AHL. He had that good season in Carolina on a good team, shaky years in Detroit on a team that did not want to win. They were going for top 5 draft picks. Putting him on a team like the Penguins, I think this is he's playing good. You just got to give the guy games. I think that those splits are tough. I don't know where I stand on those games down south. I think maybe you just, if Ned's winning, you just keep, if it's not a back-to-back, you keep putting him out there. And right now the Penguins, like I said, that they need to keep banking points. I think if you have to throw Jari in there, this is all hypothetical. If Ned's rolling, you get a back-to-back, you throw Jari in on a short leash, because I think Jari is one of those kind of goaltenders. Sometimes I wonder about the whole, I'm not a coach, but if you're trying to win games, I know it's still early, but why not give them the hook, and you have a backup goaltender for a reason. You also, this is a whole nother side tangent, maybe for another day, but Sully never uses the timeouts. I feel like he never calls timeouts. When the Penguins score a goal and then they get scored on right back, just call a timeout. Just stop the momentum. But that's a discussion for another time. Don't be afraid to maybe give Jari a shorter leash than what we've seen so far. But like I said, I understand it's not time to panic. It's early still. We're only 17 or so games in. To put a bow on it, I think we're both in agreement. You just if Ned's looking good, just let the boy run.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that line of thinking as well. So it'll be very interesting to see what Mike Sullivan does here. I mean, I think next weekend guaranteed he's going to get one of those two games. That's just a back-to-back. That's kind of not really going out on a limb there. That's just kind of common sense with how they goaltender usage in 2023. But that's about all I got for these two recaps. Let's just buzz over this schedule for the rest of the week here. Starting with 2 days off, so Penguins can rest up some legs there before they welcome the New York Rangers to town. Another big divisional game, Thanksgiving Eve. Should be a very festive type atmosphere inside PPG Paints Arena for that one. Big rivalry game. Another good measuring stick for the Penguins as well after their performance against the Gold Knights. Hopefully they can build off that. And then we wrap up Thanksgiving weekend with the back-to-back that we mentioned. First, on the road against the Buffalo Sabres on Friday the 24th. And then Sunday the 25th, they return home for a showdown against the Toronto Maple Leafs. So you get the Rangers, Sabres, and Maple Leafs on your TV this week. So two of those opponents we have not seen this year. We saw the Sabres a few weeks ago. The Penguins won that first meeting of the year, but should be a fun, exciting week. And as for us, I believe we were doing one mailbag episode this week just because of the holiday. Snail and I will be back with recaps as always this week. So before we wrap this up, I'll toss her over to Snail one more time for any final thoughts on the Penguins weekend, a loss to Carolina, a win against Vegas.
Disappointing loss to Carolina, big dub against Vegas. That's just the team that we got. That's the team that the Penguins is right now. The Penguins are right now. It's just you don't really know who you're going to get. You get a lottery team one night, and you get a Stanley Cup contender the next. This swing coming up with the Thanksgiving coming up, and we got Buffalo or Rangers, Buffalo, and Toronto. That's going to be some fun hockey to watch. Those are good teams, measuring sticks. But it's getting into the holiday seasons. It's a great time of year against some teams that are up in the north there. Festive atmospheres, I believe, indeed. Robbie, like you said, it's going to be this will be a fun week to sit on the couch. And we got a mailbag coming out on Monday. We're going to have to, if the question was not asked, we're going to have to get into some Thanksgiving hot takes and talk about what we're putting on our plates for the upcoming holiday. Argue about that. This will be a fun week.
Yeah, I mean, if we're doing a recap on Wednesday night, maybe we'll dive into that as well. I haven't looked at the questions for this week's mailbag. Knowing the food questions, though, it may or may not be something about Thanksgiving, either sides or main courses or whatever. So we'll banter about some foods either in the mailbag or at our recap on Wednesday night.
Yeah, we'll have to see if the Grinch Garrett is willing to maybe we'll do like a Thanksgiving Eve pod and just rip each other about what sides and whatnot we have, and we'll see if he's available. He doesn't. I don't think he doesn't do these recaps ever. So maybe I'll have to text him and see what's up with that.
We'll get on him at the mailbag, but and see if we can't get him on one of these recap episodes to talk about at the very least some Thanksgiving foods. But so wrapping this up real quick, Penguins go 1-1 in the weekend. A loss to Carolina on the road, a win over Vegas at home this evening. Basically a tale of two nights. Top six shines against the Hurricanes, but the bottom six picks up the slack against the Knights. Andy Nedeljkovic gets a first start in about a month, shines, gets a shutout. So Penguins back to 9-8 on the season. Next in action Wednesday night against the Rangers, and we will be back to recap that one. So for Snail, I'm Robbie, signing off for this evening. We'll talk to you guys later this week.